You would agree that empathy is becoming a game changer in leadership. In today's fast-moving business environment, leaders who truly understand and connect with their teams are seeing remarkable results. In the next session, Empathy in Action, the leadership skill that builds stronger teams, our panelists will explore practical ways to integrate empathy into leadership, creating environments where people feel valued, heard, and motivated. Prepare yourself to discover strategies that enhance team cohesion, boost morale, and deliver measurable performance gains. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Dr. Jazmin Burns, founder, owner, CEO, and psychologist at Burns Virtual Psychological Solutions. And panelists, Dr. Joann Schaefer, MD, President and CEO of CIRV Health, Consulting and Coaching. And then we have Jose Pereira, founder and CEO of JoseConnect.com, LLC, Dr. Heather Walker, CEO of Lead with Levity, Marty Herbert, President and CEO of Herbert Insights and Innovations, HI&I, and Anna Kay, founder of Supreme Health Solutions. Let's welcome them with a huge round of applause.
Excuse me. Can you guys all hear me?
That is yes, that's on. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the last day of the conference. We're going to do things a little differently today. This is not going to be one of those panels where I throw a question to the panelists, they answer, and blah, blah, blah. We really want this to feel like a flowing conversation. So today we're going to talk about empathy in leadership, not as a buzzword or a soft add-on, but we're talking about what it actually looks like in day-to-day moments that shape teams, how leaders communicate, how they build trust, how they navigate tension, and how they help people, their staff, do their best work. So the goal today is to make this practical, honest, and grounded. So I'm hoping you guys are going to come away with real-world examples that we're going to talk about. There may be some disagreement, maybe. This is like live, so we'll see what happens. And hopefully a few things you can use right away in your practice. So panelists, when you hear the phrase empathetic leadership, what does that actually look like in real life? Not in theory, but in day-to-day work. Because what I've noticed is you can't be an empathetic leader without compassion. Empathy is important for building trust and understanding, but compassion seems to be that next step where you bridge the understanding into action. So just for a quick example, at my practice, I don't do just general check-ins with my team. I'm asking more explicit questions like, how can I support you in your work? What does your workload feel like? Does it feel manageable? And I allow a safe place for my team to feel like they can have that transparency and open communication and vulnerability with me. And I validate my staff when they experience life stressors in their personal lives, and I don't guilt trip them when life happens. So I'll turn it whoever wants to answer. But again, what does empathetic leadership look like in your practice?
So I would love to add to what you just said. Growing up for me, when people talked about empathy, they would always talk about, well, you need to kind of think about what life is like in the other person's shoes, right? Put yourself in their shoes, think about what their challenges are and what their perspective might be and all of that. And that's all well and good, but if you don't actually know the person, if you haven't taken the time to have a conversation with them, to understand what's important to them, what their struggles are, what their values are, where they want to go in the future, it's really difficult to put yourself in their shoes. You're not going to know. You're only guessing, you're only assuming. So for me, empathy requires a level of familiarity with the person, right?
And we've all been there, right? I mean, we've all been in their shoes. And a lot of the time, it really becomes about remembering we've been there and meeting them on that personal human connection and realizing that they're probably going through the same struggles that we went through when we were, little baby consultants or whatever it is that we were, growing up in that same realm, they're there to do the job that you've put them there to do, and remembering that we had to do it first.
Yeah, and for me, empathy is where I feel it starts with self-awareness and checking in with yourself, and then being aware of others, and then checking in with others, you know, and asking questions and listening.
Absolutely. So, you know, I'm already hearing that empathy is not just about being kind, it's about how leaders understand people well enough to lead them effectively. So, one thing that comes up quickly, I think, is, again, as Heather was talking about, it's hard to empathize with people you don't know, right? If you know their title, great, but they're more than a title, they're a human being. So how do you actually get to know your people in a real way, especially early on, whether that's onboarding or even as early as in the interview? Anyone want to share?
I want to add something related to that, because I think that, because you talk about empathy, putting in the shoes of the other, that's so true. But having empathy, that doesn't mean that you need to agree with them, but you need to understand them. And the only way is having the interaction with employees. One of the most common mistakes that the leader does is that they tend to isolate themselves. And the only way you really can understand the other is having the interaction with them. And then you can know how they think, how they feel, how they believe. That doesn't mean that you have to agree, but you know where they're coming from. So you can have that empathy, that they know that you understand them. So that makes that relation more trustful when you do it that way.
I would like to add that having led teams of 4 to teams of 500, it's really important as a leader that you build environments of trust, because until you have an environment of trust, you can't have your employees be vulnerable. And as a leader, you need to be vulnerable first and create that space to get to know the person that you're working with. So you can do simple, practical things, which I know we'll get into, but just creating the environment of safety and trust to allow vulnerability to exist. You're the leader goes first, and then hopefully it will be reciprocated, that they can be vulnerable and you allow that space to get to know the person that you're working with.
So I'm going to ask, how do you guys feel about those icebreakers in the office? Because I know some employees absolutely hate them, but do you find like activities like that are actually helpful in building that compassion, that empathy, learning about the person?
I think it depends on how the icebreakers are done, because they don't always have to be so deeply personal. They can be things like, hey, if you were going to walk onto a baseball field, what would be your walk-on song? You know, it could be something fun that is not as threatening to an individual about revealing something so personal, and you let that evolve over time. You can also do things when you're the leader, when there's a new hire, just have coffee with the new hire. It's 30 minutes, it's hardly any time, and you would be amazed at what that little tiny bridge at the beginning of an employee starting one-on-one with the boss or the big boss does. I had 500 employees. I still had time to make a coffee roundtable with the 11 new hires of that quarter, or that, we just made it, when I had 11 new hires, we had coffee. You can have time. And when I was with a smaller organization, I made sure that I had one-on-one coffees. But you get a chance to meet with the big boss, the leader, and see that they're human too. And then I made a point to get to know them, their spouse's name, are they dog people or cat people? And then I remembered it, and I took notes on their profile. And I tried to remember that stuff, because even when I worked at a company with 500 people, I wrote birthday cards handwritten to every single employee. It did not take much time, and those are things that really build a culture.
I think that's really important, that human connection. And it sounds like, again, once you really know someone, it's harder to just reduce them to a frustration or a problem or just a number on your team. So empathy gets easier when people stop feeling so abstract, right? So let's make this concrete, because I think that's where the idea really starts to land. So can one of you maybe share a moment where leading with empathy actually changed something? What happened and what was that difference? What did you do?
I can share. This is a leadership mistake slash let's kind of try and find a way to make this right. So I've led teams of 2, just me and one other person, right? A mighty team of 2, all the way up to production lines of over 25. And I hired someone who was in the middle of a career transition. And I thought, this person can do the job, potentially with some time, some training, some support. But the team did not want me to hire this person. They were so against me hiring this person. And guess what? I did it anyway, because I said, we need someone in this role, and we need them now, and this is going to give us some relief. And this person, it's gonna be okay, y'all. It's gonna be fine. Fast forward, 30 days in, I'm starting to notice that it's not fine. They are not picking up the role. We're moving at a pace that's a little bit too fast for them. And the team is noticing it. It's starting to create a burden for everybody. And I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do about this? We started having conversations, yes, about, how's it going? Let's talk about your development plan. Let's talk about all of these things. But it got to a point where I started to realize this is just not going to work out. So instead of taking this person into my office, sitting them down across from me in this, we're going to face off, and I'm going to tell you that you have a certain amount of time to get it together or you're out of here, because that's often what happens, right? I said, let's go for a walk, because I love to do walk and talks with my team, because, that's, especially if you're having a conversation that might be a little bit tricky, it allows you both to get all of that nervous energy out and to be able to focus on what's going on. And throughout this conversation, at first, I didn't even know that he also noticed that he wasn't performing at the level that he wanted to. And we got to talking, and we talked about his values and where he saw his career, and we were able to eventually work him into another position that was a much better fit. And it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't courageous enough and humble enough to say, hey, this is on me to some extent. What can I do? How can I help? And I know that you have strengths. I know that you have gifts and talents, and they might be better placed in a different position. Let's find that for you.
Let me share something that's a life experience. 35 years ago, I was in the oil and gas, and we started a joint venture with a Japanese company. I have never worked with Japanese. So when I began to interact with them, I was kind of trying to understand them. I remember I bought a book about how to deal with the Japanese. I began to read about the Japanese culture, and it was kind of difficult because I'm Venezuelan and we are Latin Americans, And working with Japanese, we were totally different culture. So I remember that my boss was a Japanese, and I remember one day he said, hey, let's take a break and let's have some drinks, and we went because they do Friday drinks, and and they do a lot. And we begin to interact with these guys, and the things begin to, connect, because we begin to treat us from the human side. Long story short is that we created a great culture that I maintain with them as of today. Today we have a WhatsApp group. All of us are grandfathers, and we share our stories. Some of them are retired, and we are still our friends 35 years from that. And that is a real life example how connecting with the people from a human side, you can do that.
I absolutely love that. Thank you both for sharing. That's wonderful.
I would like to add too.
Sure, yeah.
I have noticed too moments where someone might not perform their best. And rather than coming from a place of reacting, I pause and also have already understood how they want to be addressed and what motivates them and the support that they need. And having that understanding builds that trust and builds upon the empathy, and how to communicate with your team.
Absolutely. So I think that these examples matter because they show that empathy is not vague. It's actionable. You guys are putting in the work, and it's not a ton of work. You're having these conversations, even like just these microscopic moments, if you will, can go a long way. They're very, very important. But now I want to talk about the part that people usually avoid. So I'm going to call this the yeah, but section of our conversation. So empathy sounds great when relationships are healthy, but what about when things start to feel, strained or awkward or just hard, or you just don't like the person? So what do you guys do when the relationship is off, and how do you feel an empathetic leader should handle these kinds of situations?
I think it's interesting, a lot of the conversations we're having so far are the in-person connections. I have a fully remote team. We're everywhere. So making those connections in a real human way through the virtual screen becomes difficult, right? It becomes one of those challenges that we're constantly up against. We talk about, getting to know the cat name or the dog name, or having the cat crawl up on your shoulder during the virtual meeting that you're having with the team, right?
That's my cat.
So, and you immediately find out, that Patron is there, so you figure out the animal names very quickly in those situations, and having the trust and the belief in our people and meeting them where they are allows them to have their camera on, allows them to be there in their pajamas or whatever, allows their family to be running in the background, and having the type of culture and openness within your company as a leader that lets you have those natural moments. Because at some level, we're even more personal when we're virtual, when we're completely remote. Because how many times do you get into an office situation and you get the office version of whoever that person is? And sometimes I think it's probably even more challenging sometimes to break through that in an office situation, whereas from a remote perspective, we immediately are inside your home. You know when the kid's late to school. You know when it's time to go pick them up. You know what that schedule looks like because you have the flexibility in your culture. You have the trust of your people for them to let you as a leader into that, especially in a small business like we are, and we're multi-time zone, so things are happening. Life is happening throughout the day in the background, and it gives us the ability to lean in a little bit and kind of turn that challenge of being not in person and not having the cup of coffee into something a little bit more sometimes.
And I love that you brought that up because my team is fully remote as well. And so the multiple time zones and everything, and we're a small team as well. And the life definitely happens. There are times I swear I lock the door and somehow my 4-year-old still manages to make it into the office and talk to my staff. And I love it. And they love it too. I think that kind of also breaks the ice and shows, again, that human level. Like, I'm not just the boss. I'm a mom, right? Now, one of the things that I have noticed being fully virtual is that written communication comes across very differently, right? Because you can't be in the room to feel the energy of what that person is giving off. So I know that in the past, we've had some awkward moments, between students, because I have students on my team as well, students and staff, chatting with each other on, Google. And I have staff later and they're like, I think this person is mad at me, or they're coming across as really bossy. And I've had to do check-ins. I can't do a walk and talk, but I can do a quick little Google check-in to see what exactly is going on. And in those moments, in those human moments, and when I'm having those conversations, I'm noticing that the tone is coming across from a place of anxiety. The person is afraid they're failing their team, they're afraid that they're gonna miss a deadline or whatever. And when I have those conversations, I'm like, okay, if you need help, all you have to do is ask. I'm not gonna be mad at you if you ask for help. And so again, I think having those moments, those specific check-ins, seeing if everything is going okay, even on a personal level. You don't have to go all up in their lives, but just say like, hey, is everything okay? That makes a person feel seen, and that can really alleviate those awkward moments, and I think lead to very strong, powerful moments on the team.
I would add that, a lot of healthcare is delivered in person with teams, and so there's not a virtual component so much. But I think when you find conflict, when you can feel the tension, the best thing to do is to have a, wave the white flag moment and say, hey, just confront it directly. And it's the leader's opportunity or the manager's opportunity to brush up on that EQ, get that moment and deal with it immediately and say, hey, I'm feeling that there's something not right here in this space, and I'd like an opportunity to talk. And get it on the table right away and say, this is just maybe I'm feeling a disconnect, but how can we repair this moment in time? And the leader has to go first, be calm, be cool, collected, and offer to repair, and offer to apologize if there's anything you've said or done, that has been miscommunicated. Was there an email? Was there a moment, I've found as a leader that there have been many times when I said something that was completely misinterpreted because I had more information than the person did. And so you look for those opportunities to apologize, and it can really build a relationship. If you've done that and it's not working, and the relationship is not taking the step forward, call HR, get HR in the room, and now it's time to document stuff. I don't mess around with those things. You either fix the relationship or you start down another path. It's just better because the employee needs to know they need to get on the plan or grow somewhere else. As I like to say, I'm going to plant you, I'm going to water you, and I'm going to feed you, but you have to grow. And if you're not growing here, then I need to uproot you and get you somewhere else where you will grow. Not a judgment. It's just you're not right for here. And so yeah.
I want to, go ahead. I have something to add. We've been talking a lot about people leadership, right? But there's also empathy when you're working with your peers. Empathy can give you so much influence when you're working with your peers. And when you're working with someone who's in another department, another part of the organization that earlier you mentioned you don't like, you don't get along with, maybe on the surface it seems like you have opposing views even. I personally like to take a step back and say, okay, what kinds of assumptions and biases am I bringing into this that I'm putting on this person, that I'm looking at them and I'm saying they are against me and they want all the resources and they don't want me to have any of the resources. Why am I saying that? That's not necessarily true. I work very hard to try and find the commonalities between myself and that other person so that when I do approach them, when we do have that conversation, we can find some common ground, because chances are good if you're working within the same organization, you should have the same goals ultimately and the same values, similar values, and you can stand on those And that can be your firm base to then grow from there. And you can find allies within your organization, people who maybe spoke out against what you were doing before, but because you were able to see eye to eye, now they've become supporters for you.
That's great. Thank you for that. So, everything we've said so far might feel easier in like smaller teams or smaller groups. But, many leaders who might be listening are part of these like huge organizations. So what are realistic things that leaders can actually do when they feel like they can't talk to everyone?
But in a huge organization, you can do things, for example, morning walks into the offices and saying hello to the people. You take, let's walk in this building, this floor, this week, and next week the other. So you organize yourself. Or you select the employees of the month, and you bring it to the headquarters, and you have a lunch or a dinner with them, and you recognize them. You have a chat with them. You do the monthly accountability meetings with them. So you have many ways you can connect with them, even in the organization is big. You're not going to have one-on-one with everybody, but they will have the opportunity to talk directly with you.
I agree. And one of the things you can do is when you're in a large organization, when I had 500 employees, I had a large administration. So I had several vice presidents, and then they had directors and managers underneath them. I asked them to let me know how employees were doing. Like, did someone lose a mother, a father, a child, a spouse? I wanted to know those things. I would send cards to them, personal cards. I wanted to know when people were doing a great job, had very good success with a project. I wanted to know the team members so I could recognize the team members in either on calls or meetings or in manager meetings. I needed to know the kudos, and I needed to know when people were struggling with things so I can go by and recognize them. We were largely in the same building, so I was able to go and do morning rounds, and I'd target an area of the building, and I'd just hit them. It was a great pickup for me, but it was a great pickup for them too, just to see the boss walking around with a cup of coffee and do my morning rounds. It was kind of a hangover from morning rounds at the hospital, but this was way more fun. And just walk around and say hello to people, and you get to know them, and you get to know different things about them. And you see the pictures of the families on the desk, and you ask who they are, and it's just a way for people to be seen. And people remember this stuff. And I would walk around and I'd see the birthday card I sent them 4 months ago still on their card or on their desk. So you can have an impact. And when you're managers, when you hire leaderships that are like you hire those leaders that are going to be empathetic. You're still firm, you still follow the rules, you still hold people accountable. And you're not just nice, you're not weak. You're kind, you're caring, you're compassionate, you're empathetic, and you get the job done because these people stay, they're loyal, and it adds dollars to the bottom line.
Let me add something else, because that is a great example that you put there. It came to my mind. I live in Houston. We had a couple of years ago the Harvey, the hurricane. So it was really messy in Houston, and many people lost their houses. And flooding, all this stuff. And I remember that I called to my team and said, hey, let's see what we can do. And we organized like a kind of a team group. They begin to take care, organize all the employees that had lost their houses. And we begin to organize the company how to help them. And we begin to send direct message to everybody. And until today, people still recognize that because we impacted their life. And for the company, it was easy. It was not a big money, but it was a highly impactful in the organization.
So you can be visible in quote unquote small ways, and that's something that's scalable, right? You don't have to do these big grandiose things as an empathetic leader, but these small moments can go a long way. And I remember when I worked at a larger, business with multiple departments, they would do like team challenges, and newsletters, and it would make the office feel fun if we had to, like, during holidays, who made the best, I don't know, Christmas cookies, or who had the best, like, costumes. And, like, even moments like that made it feel fun and human. And I think those are some, again, realistic things that leaders can do starting tomorrow if they wanted to. So we've talked about people, we've talked about trust, we've talked about communication, and somehow we've made it this far without talking about AI. Okay, so AI is shaping leadership, and so I wanted to just kind of touch on that a little bit. What have you guys noticed in terms of AI helping or hurting leaders when it comes to empathy?
Well, it's the corporate email, right? I mean, the easy answer is it's the corporate email that, the leader tucks away in his office, and he gets onto his favorite AI platform and says, hey, help me craft a message that sounds empathetic for my people. And it does in robot ease, right? So it can be helpful, right? It can be helpful to craft those, the more serious messages, death in the family, those types of things, right? And especially if, as a leader, you aren't naturally empathetic. It happens. Right? There are some very cold leaders out there. So AI can help a little bit in those situations to help tone down and help bring some kind of empathetic view into what it is you're writing. But it can also come across as flat. It can come across as not caring. So I think there's a fine line, right? AI is everywhere. But as soon as it starts to take over the humanity that's supposed to be in the leadership roles that we're all trying to fill, that's where we as leaders have given up that ability to stay connected and stay relevant to our people. We have to remember to not take ourselves so seriously. And sometimes it can be very humbling to be in a situation where you need help from AI. Or from maybe the person right next to you, right? So keeping all of that in mind, there's a fine line, and it's really up to us to kind of walk that, and remember to remove the M-dash, right? So do the little things that make it seem like it's not so impersonal, and stay connected to your message, right? It's going to give you a good draft, but you have to really lean in, and even if you're not, right? Even if you are that cold leader, try to have that empathy that connects you to your people, especially in the big messages and the big moments.
And if you are using, just real quick, if you are using AI, you guys please read the draft before you send it, because I've received emails and it's like, dear employee name. Okay, well, that's a bad start. So read the draft before you guys send it. Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. And I think that AI is an amazing tool for efficiency. But that human-to-human connection cannot be replaced. And in order to do that and to have empathy, you need to build a relationship with the other person. AI won't do that for you.
People are more likely to reach for their favorite AI tool than they are to pick up the phone, to walk into someone else's office, to whiteboard with them in the way that we used to. And I think that's something, we're missing something in that human connection. So I love AI, by the way. I am not anti-AI. I live in Austin, Texas. We are ground zero for AI. That said, we do need to take some time and think about how is it modifying our behavior? Are we now at a place where we're no longer reaching for the other person to say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Let's stress test this together.
And I think as leaders, we need to be aware of our shortcomings as leaders, because you can punch something into AI, and depending on the prompt, AI might become an echo chamber. And it's like, oh, you're the greatest leader, everybody loves you, whoop-de-whoop-whoop, and you're not. We're not perfect leaders. We're human leaders. And so when you're using AI, it's important to acknowledge those shortcomings in the prompt. So saying something like, I'm really wanting to support this person, but I'm having a hard time because whatever, I'm having a hard time, finding time. I'm having a hard time finding time to connect with them or whatever the case may be, right? So you're identifying the problem, but you're also identifying the issue, your shortcomings. And that, I think, is when AI becomes more of like a sounding board of like, okay, here are some realistic things you can do now. It's a personable thing. It's not just some generic, suggestion. So you also want to make sure that you're using AI as a tool and bringing some awareness to how you're leading your people. Mm-hmm. So I'm just keeping an eye on time here. And I want to leave time for questions if there are any. So,
Can I add something?
oh, sure. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about empathy a lot because we have this panel here, right? But, empathy, when we're talking about sort of empathy 1.0, taking the time to understand another person's perspective so you can figure out how to work better together. What about empathy 2.0? What about going a little bit deeper? What is the environment that this person is working in? How are we supporting them? So with AI in particular, I had a conversation with a leader a few weeks ago, and she was like, Heather, I love this. I can do so much stuff, but when do I stop? And I'm using Copilot, and my organization has all of these limits on Copilot, and I'll get started, and then I hit a limit, and I feel like I've just wasted a lot of time. It's incredibly frustrating. So what this person was missing was use cases, was systems to plug her AI tool into so that she could take that information and sort of apply it to her job. So don't just give your team the tool and say, here, you have Copilot, go use it. Help them come up with use cases for that tool.
I think that's really important. I like that empathy 2.0. That's going to be the next 2.0 thing that the conference will use. So
I agree with what Heather said about creating an environment that's safe, where others feel respected, and they are seen and heard. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in closing, maybe we can just go down the line here. What is one thing that a leader can do this week that can make a real difference within their practice?
I would say if you can adopt a philosophy of understanding that people don't come to work every morning saying, I want to do a bad job today because I just feel like it. So you understand that people generally want to come to work and do a good job and then get paid for the job that they do. And if you can just understand that when things aren't going well, it's not a people problem, it's a systems problem. And if you can just understand that people just want to be seen and heard at work, and they just want to be recognized, they just want to be a person at work, and they want to bring their whole self. And so how can you enable the systems at your job, whatever they may be, so they work smoothly and the employee can do their job? And if you are the boss, you're supposed to do that. They're trying to produce widgets, you are the widget master, help them produce their widgets. And then in the in-between, they're a human being, so get to know them and have a little fun. You spend a third of your life at your job. Don't make it painful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I always say that you spend more time with your employees than with your family sometimes. Yeah. So try to make them part of your family. I know that sometimes people say, no, I'm not here to make friends. No, but it's good if you make friends, Exactly it's good right. If you make friends. So try to understand them. It will be more fun for them. It's going to be more fun for you too. Yeah.
I would say adopt a posture of curiosity. So oftentimes I hear leaders say, it's common sense. They should know. But what I've learned through all of the workshops that I've run, hundreds of people I've talked to about this, we have, depending on where you come from, how you were raised, what your experiences have been, you may have very different views of what it takes to gain trust, lose trust, what respect looks like. So adopt a posture of curiosity around those points of difference between you that seem a little bit rough around the edges, so you can understand it.
Yeah, I'd say most of us start in corporate America, right? We don't start as leaders. We start in a place where we figure out very quickly what we don't like about business. Otherwise, we wouldn't be the leaders that we are now. So my challenge to everyone would really be the kind of business that you wanted to work at when you were younger. Create the culture, create the environment that makes you want to go to work for you back when you were that age, whatever that age was.
I would say, I think that at the end of the day, everyone wants to be acknowledged for their efforts. And I would say also that when leaders show up and are present, and they show that they care and really listen to understand, that's how empathy is, small, consistent efforts, continuous. And that's how empathy builds and trust builds.
Yeah, and I'll just close by saying just remain humble as a leader. Don't forget where you came from. Again, just kind of like Marty was saying, we all started somewhere. We might have felt like a little peon or a cog in the machine. Remember those moments and remember what kind of leader you were like, I want to work for that person. Because at the end of the day, again, like Marty said, you want to be the leader that maybe you didn't have when you were, again, a little peon. So thank you all. I think that this conversation makes it clear what empathy is. It's not about necessarily being nice all the time. It's not just a theory. It is something that leaders need to practice in how they show up and communicate with their team, respond under pressure. And at its core, empathy helps leaders lead better. And most of the time, it's not about these grand gestures. It's about those small, consistent moments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have time for questions. I'm looking for the MC. Do we have time for questions? No, okay, that's okay. No time. Okay, well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.